Met my wife 15 years ago. Stunner, but a lifelong veggie. And all this time I've been pretending to be one too. On business trips, I eat my body weight in sausages and steaks.
Staying at a Best Western supports a local independent business. So, whatever you've done, Booking Good makes up for it.
Welcome back to Headingley for our latest episode of Box 2 in partnership with Best Western Hotels GB, supporting local, proudly independent hotels. Welcome back to Box 2 in partnership with Best Western Hotels GB. I'm joined this week by a former teammate of both the Leeds Rhinos and England, the Leeds Rhinos numero uno, Richie Myler. Richie, good to see you. I was going through some old photographs last week and I stumbled across a few from 2011, which I reckon was probably my prime year, my best year. It was the first sort of exiles year, I think, and then went into 2012, went to Potchefstroom in South Africa, and you was part of it as well. Do you remember those England moments back then?
I do, yeah, it was brilliant. It was a great trip that we went on to South Africa. That come off the back of 2012 when we'd played Leeds in the Challenge Cup final.
Yep.
Then we played them in the grand final. So personally, I'd had a good year, and got the call to go to South Africa. So no, it was a good trip.
And you remember Rob, didn't you? Rob Burrow?
I did, yeah.
How was that?
It was. Well, you obviously know Rob much better than anybody, and he's a strange character. He's a joker. He was always making pranks and all sorts. But I hadn't roomed with him. I hadn't had spent much time with him until being put in a room with him for 2 weeks. So it was an interesting experience. But no, it was quiet. It didn't snow, which was a good thing.
He was worried about some thunder, wasn't he?
Well, you remember the thunderstorms were like you've never seen them before. Like it was literally lighting up the sky completely for the whole night. And like you've said, he wasn't the best with thunderstorms.
I once was with him in the World Cup in 2008 in Brisbane, and the worst thunderstorms I've ever seen in my life. And he was running up and down the hotel corridors like, Jonesy, why is it like this? Absolutely terrified. It's like somewhere out of Team America. I remember being on that trip as well to South Africa, sat next to Rangi Chase for the best part of about 12 hours. That was an interesting one. Really sort of smart, interesting guy actually. And it's good, isn't it? When you go on trips like that, I think that's the beauty of it. You get to see and spend time with players that you've seen in that 80-minute window on a Friday night, but you don't know what they're like, who they are, or how good they are until you actually play with them. So, real good. Listen, let's reflect back on last week. Tough gig. Red hot Wigan, 50-0 never reads well. And it's always tough and it hurts. You know me, I'm always looking at the positives and try to think about moving forward in the future. And the highlight for me is just seeing Jack Sinfield, Morgan Gannon get a little bit more time under the belt. You know, and I always talk about the refiner's fire being born out of adversity, and I do believe those two are two individuals that will carry us on into the future, augmented and supplemented by people like players like yourself, obviously out injured at the minute. But it is good to see Morgan and Jack getting those experiences, albeit in adversity.
Yeah, I think you just, like you said, you touched on then, you've seen a red hot Wigan that are in playoff mode and are ready to go, and you can see that they're in the position in the league that they're in because they're firing on all cylinders. And we had an under-strength team, no disrespect to a couple more senior players. If you look at on paper from the start of the year 1 to 17, there's quite a few numbers missing on there. But like I said, I think the experience that being in hard-fought matches like that and being up against a really tough opposition, you got to take the positives from it. And like you say, obviously having the amount of young players we had out there, gaining that first team experience, albeit under circumstances that you don't really want to be in, but they sometimes bring you out the other side a better player and a tougher player from the back of it. It can have the adverse effect where if you constantly on the back of that week in, week out, then that's not going to be good for development of a player, and that's why you don't really want to put too many young players in at once. But I think with the situation we're at the moment, and Rowan's philosophy is to bring these young players through and expose them to tough matches, because if you think when you're in the academy, they're playing teams and winning 100-0, they're playing, and no disrespect to the teams they're playing against, but that's not going to improve their development at all. Whereas when they play Wigan or St Helens or Warrington in the academy, they're hard-fought matches, and it doesn't really matter if they win or lose in the academy because they're getting exposed to big games. So I think for those guys, the next step is to be playing against men and be playing against being in tough games and tough matches. However, maybe not 50-0 is not the best way to go.
No, it's not easy. You've always been a character though, Richie. I think you lead by example. That's somebody that does really well, resilient within those storms. Going through injury at the minute, I was listening to the England Rugby Union preparation, and there was a bit of dialogue about the players that aren't playing, like Owen Farrell, for example, and how important they are still, because they're still a part of the squad. They're influential. There's those little conversations that they're having. Somebody like yourself, and the leadership experience that you've got, to have those little whispers in Jack's ears. How have you spent the last couple of weeks trying to invest some of your own expertise into his development?
Yeah, I think Jack's a very quiet, and he's been around rugby league for his whole entire life, obviously.
Yeah.
And he's a student of the game, and he's very astute in his own preparation. You see him in the gym. He's very much meticulous on the way he preps for games, and he's his own person. I think he knows what he's good at, knows what areas of the games he needs to work on. And I think it's about him taking that next step and inserting himself. Because if you watch him in an academy game, he really takes the lead, and you can see he's dominant in the thing. And I think when you come into an adult environment, what I was always fortunate, I maybe got it wrong on a lot of times and annoyed a lot of people around me because I was loud, I was in your face, and I was shouting for the ball left, right, and centre. Even if I shouldn't have had the ball, I was shouting for it. You played with me a long time, and I did that from 17 and 18. That was just in my makeup. I just wanted to assert myself in that direction. Other people assert themselves by just playing their game well, and I think that's what Jack is finding his feet with. I think going forward he'll develop into having being more assertive on the field, and I think that'll bring his game up more.
Hold that thought, because I really want to talk to you about your early days. I remember you coming through, and you was like a young, exciting child prodigy. Obviously, that move there from Salford to Warrington at the time was big news, and everybody had their eyeballs on it. The women got a big win against Wigan at the weekend, which was brilliant, and that informs them going into the playoffs there of their current form. Rising tide, going back to St Helens, going into playoffs. Now, obviously, they lost to St Helens in the Challenge Cup final. They've since had the revenge, but it's time for the trophies, the silverware, on offer now. They'll have a bit of confidence going into some of those playoff games, but it reminds me of 2012 when a red-hot Warrington team coming out of that 2011 period, 2012, beat us Leeds in the Challenge Cup final, and then we had an epic grand final in 2012 there. Interestingly, I remember very little about the Challenge Cup. The negative memories seem to disappear quite quick, but in your reflection, what was the contrasting differences between playing in a big game like the Challenge Cup and experiencing the grand final as well? I
think looking back in the past of it, we'd been there in 2010 and won the Challenge Cup, and we'd won it in 2009 as well. So I think going to the Challenge Cup, we knew what it felt like, we knew what the experience was going to be, and we were on, at that point of the season, we were on high. We were playing at a very top of our game, and we ended up going into that final. It was a close game in the end. I mean, if we can all debate whether Lula-Wise tackle on Hudson was actually a penalty or whether it was play on. But there wasn't much in the game in that one. But the whole feel, the environment, going to Wembley, we knew how that felt in a sense, and as a group, we knew what was going to Old Trafford on the Saturday, and that whole feel was just completely alien to us as a team. And I think Leeds at the time just knew how to win, and I think obviously looking back on the game, I think Kev Sinfield turned it on for 25 minutes. He got himself up off the floor after being knocked out, scored a try, kicked us to death, and literally just led his team single-handedly to glory. And I think that whole experience, I think it was, they've talked about the Saints team in the last 4 years. It's a group of people being together and just knowing how to win. Yeah. Knowing how to win those and experiencing winning together creates such a great atmosphere and great drive, and the team goes in the right direction because winning together is the biggest thing, as you be aware of. Yeah, mate, absolutely came, and that was born out of adversity over years, and you get galvanised by it, and the little visual, verbal cues that become part of the game. You just respond in a way where you know exactly where somebody's going to run, what pass they're going to put on, what kick, and
I think it's really interesting you talk about the game there in terms of the collision. Kev got knocked out in the grand final. Hodgson and Lulawai, that tackle, mate, he'd probably got signed die these days, you know, Lulawai there. When you're talking about head contact, at the time though, it was like that, oh, we're not too short, it's a little bit grey. And I don't think anybody would have been surprised if it had been allowed to play on, scored a try. It was one of the biggest hitters ever. Interestingly, you know, the Kev Sinfield one there, you mentioned it, and I think the game's moving forward in the right direction, by the way. We've got to be really careful with brain health. But Kev gets up off the deck. It's a head-on-head collision with Kev and Monaghan, which, as you know, certainly in the other code, is big no-no now. You know, massive, the responsibility of the tackler not to be reckless there. But both of them stay on. He gets up, kicks a goal, scores a try, has massive influence. I think he gets Harry Sunderland and then is invited to be England captain not long after that. And you think, you know, had it been today, probably goes off, don't play again, and it might have been a completely different outcome. History's completely different. Going back to Warrington, they've had some unbelievable players, some big moments, and I think for me, looking back, that period there that we're talking about, that sort of 11-12, I thought they were red hot. They were unbelievable. In fact, the year before, is that the year when we played and expected, we went to your place in the semis and everybody expected you guys to win.
That was 11.
Was it? Yeah, it was 11. Yeah, the year
I gave
before.
a penalty away and Kev kicked a penalty.
So Richie was still playing for Leeds almost.
I think that was 11.
He gave us the bye to the final. In fact, there's an old folk tale, I don't know if it's true, that they were that confident they'd already give you guys the grand final balls. So I've heard anyway. Anyway, we went there. We shall not be doomed. We got through and we managed to get another win. But why is it that you think Warrington never kicked on and actually got over that grand final winning hurdle?
Well, I think, 2012, like I just said, I think we came up against the Leeds team that, in no disrespect to the whole team, but Kev turned it on for 25 minutes.
Yep.
And they all followed his direction, and I think that game was very in the balance and was close from start to finish. That whole year we could have easily done the double as a Warrington team, and that would have been an amazing achievement for the club. 2013 we go back there again as in a final against Wigan. Joe Monaghan gets knocked out a minute before half time, changes the whole down. They go in, score at half time. They go into the dressing room, come back out. It's a totally different game.
Yeah.
So that period of, I think we won 2011. We may have won the league leaders.
Yep.
2010 they won the Challenge Cup final. So I think that period, and obviously rugby league's such a small margin for getting it right and getting it wrong. I think either if those finals go the right way, then that's a great historic period for Warrington as a club.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the fine line just was on the wrong side, and we were unable to. To go back to your point about Warrington as a club, I think they're a very ambitious club that have a lot of resources, that have thrown a lot of things at becoming successful.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that's just gone against them in certain times. But I don't think they're a million miles off winning something, and I think they've got the ability and all the talent to do that. And I think you will see them do that eventually. It's just when. And like I said, the fine margin between getting it right and getting it wrong is very close.
It's just like a shark tasting blood. Once you've had it, poof, you go back and you understand that to get there. And it is a great club, you know. It's got everything you need, all the ingredients, just not being able to get over the line. Context is king. And I often think about, you know, clubs like Craven Park with OKR there, and what works for them, what works for Lee Leopards, what works for Catalan is all relative to them. I just don't know if there's something missing at Warrington. Don't quite know what it is, but hold that thought there, because another club that you played for in Catalan Dragons, they've ticked most of the boxes. They've been to grand finals, they've won the Challenge Cups, they've done the league leaders, but they haven't quite got over the grand final hurdle. Before we get there though, I just wanted to go right back to what I was talking about. Young Richie Myler plays at Salford's, come out of Widnes, bit of history there that I want to touch on as well. Then you have this progression through Warrington, Catalan, Leeds, playing for England and Ireland as well. But just tell me, growing up in Widnes, which was a mad rugby league town, back in the 90s, come off the back of, I think, like a World Cup, been world champions against Canberra there. So what was it like growing up for you? Did you always aspire to be a rugby player?
Well, I've come from a history of a family that played rugby. Like my granddad's brother was Dougie Lawton, so he has a huge rugby league heritage. I'm from a town that that's pretty much what you do. You play rugby. If you don't play rugby, you either support Liverpool or Everton. That's pretty much the way it went. And
what were you, red or blue?
no, I wasn't. I just sat on the fence. I was a rugby league fan. But no, they're a massive. It was a massive rugby league thing. All my mates played rugby. I did it from 5-year-old, and I loved it. As soon as I started, as soon as I had a rugby ball, that was all I ever wanted to do. And I was fortunate enough that someone saw something in me. I was in the Widnes set up from 11. I think I went into scholarship at 11. John Foran and Roger Harrison, two stalwarts that have always brought so many kids through the system at one. And if you look at that final last year, not to think about the final last year, there was 7 Widnes lads playing.
Wow.
For 2 different separate teams. Obviously, we had 3: Jared, Sam Walters, myself, and then you've got Percival, Makinson, and Bennison, and there's another one that played for Saints. So there was 7 Widnes lads playing in a final. It shows you that it's a town that's full of steep in rugby league history. So for me, that was all I ever wanted to do. Unfortunately, I played that. I think I was 17. I come straight out of school, and Steve McCormack said to me, "Do you want to come training with us?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really like school. I'm not that good at school. Education wasn't for me. Yeah, I'd love to." So I pretty much went straight into the first team training as much as I could. I was fortunate to play a couple of games, and then I played the last game of the year was Batley away. It was my debut. Joel Penny gets injured, and he goes, "Right, I'm going to play you." And I was like, "All right, okay." Grixie was in the team. Scott Grix was in the team.
Brilliant.
And he goes, "I'm going to play you." And I was like, "Oh, all right, okay." So I'll come off the bench. I'm sat there playing up that hill, first ever game. Come on, played about 25 minutes. Did all right, nearly scored. And then he goes, "Actually, the semi-finals, like the Premier League semi-finals next week against Castleford, he's still injured, Joel Penny, so I'm going to play you again."
Wow.
So I was like, "No, he's joking. Like, there's no way I'm in." But I was in, played live on Sky. I think I come on, we got absolutely Castleford tore us to shreds, but I came on with about 20 minutes to go. I actually remember it, and Terry O'Connor always still laughs about it to this day. I had my pants pulled down on television. So 7-year-old, someone's pulled me down from behind. I had these awful boxer shorts on, and he's absolutely tore strips off me on the telly.
Brilliant.
And I said to him, "Well, you're not even like..." Just absolutely tore strips. It was like, he's got his granddad's boxers on, look at the state of him. And no, it was good. And it's an experience I loved it. But then obviously Widnes went into turmoil after that season because they didn't get promoted.
Yeah.
So basically the club turned around and said, "Everyone's a free agent.
Right.
We're going to offer you a new contract, but we're forming a new business. We're writing stuff off, we're changing the board. We're going to offer you a new contract." And at the same time, our conditioner at the time, Andy Haig, says, "I'm going to Salford. Salford have just come in from the Super League and they're staying full time. I think you should come there with me." And that's how it all came about. So met with Sean McRae at the Thistle Hotel, I think it was Haydock at the time, and sat there, Bomber sat there and just said, "Right, well, you come and play for me." They were silly with my contract though, because they put £500, what was it, a real small contract, but I got £500 an appearance and £500 a win, because they thought, he's only going to play like 5-6 games, it's not going to... But what happened was, we went into the season, they play like Northern Rail games at the beginning, so you play like 5 cup games. And Robbie Paul gets injured, so I'm straight in playing. I played all those games. I then played 33 games in the season. We won 31, won the league, won the league, won the cup, and got promoted. So I was like,
jackpot repeater.
I was like, and you could see them counting their heads, going, "This is ridiculous! Like, we have to pay all this money out." But the beauty of my contract was as well, what I had was on the thing, quite smart really, that I had whatever the end year wage was year 1 was the start of year 2.
Oh wow.
So you could see them all sat there scratching their heads like, what's going on? So I went from like say 10 to like 40,000 within like over, and they're thinking, "We didn't plan for any of this." And then they had it again the following year.
Right.
So I had a 3-year contract, and every year it did the same thing. So after 2 years, Warrington come in, so they went, "Actually, Rich, you can go to Warrington."
Compound exponential interest, wasn't it?
So that was pretty much.
But obviously behind the scenes, perception and reality, people probably wouldn't, I imagine, have known this, and it was quite tumultuous, wasn't it, when you left Salford to go to Warrington?
Yeah, and I think I got labelled as the villain in the sense of which. it was quite a funny story. I literally we were playing Hull Bradford at home. We were playing on the Friday, so we were doing captain's run on the field on the Thursday. And Steve Sims comes up to me and goes, "Oh, John Wilkinson wants to see you after team run. He's up in Chairman's office."
Yeah.
I'm thinking, all right, okay, fine. I goes into a room with John, and John's got 2 pieces of paper on the table, and he goes, "This is the contract from Warrington, where you get X amount of money and we get X amount of money, and this is our extended 3-year deal. Now I'm going to put this one in the drawer, and I think you should sign that one." So I goes, "Well, John, there's 10 games left. We're still in the mix of the season. Like you can't announce that. Like let's do this deal, but let's finish out the year and move, and then we'll all part ways." Yeah, no problem. We plays Bradford on the Friday, gets annihilated. Sean McRae walks straight into his press conference and goes, "I just want to say we've done everything we can to keep Richie Myler, but he's decided to leave to Warrington." So I walks in Monday morning and goes, "What?" And he went, "I'm sorry, I was under pressure, so I just decided to do it."
Wow.
And I was like, "Thanks." So
Pants down again.
But yeah, it is what it is.
But it's important, isn't it? I mean, you can tell that we can look back in laughter now. But
Well, the funnier thing was, then I had to then play the next few rounds. I think we played at home against Saints the week after, and rightly so, because it looked like to the Salford fans that I'd gone.
Yeah.
See you later. I'm off. I'm going to go get Warrington. Which in reality, I did leave. I did leave Salford and go and join Warrington, but there was more to it in the sense of just with the way that the deal worked and it worked well for the club and it worked well for me as a player to go to a no disrespect, but a more ambitious, bigger club. That's what happened at the time. But to play, I think after like 20 minutes of playing, the whole South Stand or West Stand, whatever it was at Salford, sang "Die, Die, Myler, Myler, Die" for a good 10 minutes of the first half.
Wow.
And I remember sitting in the dressing room at half time and looking at Sean McRae, and he just shook his head and said, "I'm really sorry." Because he was just like, "I know that this is going downhill." And I reckon I only played a couple more games that season, and he just said, "It's not worth. We couldn't make the playoffs, we couldn't get relegated." He just had to take you out of the limelight.
No wonder you built up some resilience, mate, at a young age. Moving from there, I mean, it was a high-profile thing at the time. Going into a big Warrington club, Tony Smith as well, and obviously been to Leeds, he'd done what he'd done here. I still reckon he's the guru. I love watching Tony. I could watch him or listen to him all day long. But how were those early memories under Tony Smith?
Well, yeah, off the back of that year, I think because I ended up still playing. I played for England that season, so we played. No, it was the year before that actually. I played in a friendly against Doncaster, against Wales at Doncaster. Yeah. Because you guys were playing, Leeds were playing Saints in the final, so there was about 14 players playing in that game that were all going in. So there was no halves. I think me and Martin Gleeson played in the halves. Right. At Doncaster, I think we won something like 90-6 or something. That was 2008. So then 2009. I was in the Four Nations, so Smithy still picked me to play, even though I'd had an indifferent year at Salford and come out of the thing. I think obviously you'd have to ask him, but I think he had an eye on future. I was going to Warrington, experience bring me into the squad. So I played in that Four Nations competition, 2009 for England. And I don't know if you would have been, no, I don't know.
No, 9.
So, yeah, and then I played the first game against France, and Jean-Philippe Bale absolutely knocked me into next week at like 3 minutes to go, out cold. I stepped off my right foot and he just went whack right on my chin. Completely out cold, fast asleep. And I didn't play the rest of the competition. I then stupidly finished that tournament and went to Thailand for 2 weeks with Chris Bridge.
Wow.
So I come back from being in there, 2 weeks in Thailand, straight into pre-season. I walked through the front door and Smithy tore strips off me. He was like, "What have you been doing?" Like, basically, you look like you've been eating a burger for 2 weeks. You look like you've done nothing, and absolutely. So starting off at Warrington, I'd gone in on a big contract, big transfer fee. I had 2 weeks away, thinking I was Billy Big Time, and then I was like, right, straight back down to earth, flogging. But no, Smithy was good because he was. You worked with him for a while, and he was big on being a good person and making sure that as little things like you had the right kit on, you were on time, you were punctual. So he gave me a good grounding for my professional career at the very, very beginning on what you do in a work environment and how you conduct yourself in a work environment and how you go about your business and how you train and how you prepare for games. And it was hard because obviously I was an 18, 19-year-old that had the big load of transfer fee on me and had all the pressure of being in an environment and the personality I was not cocky, but I was up in front because I think even as a halfback coming into an environment with the likes of Adrian Morley, Lee Breers, Michael Monaghan, all these big name players, you have to have, it's like fight or flight, isn't it? You have to either stand at the front and go, come on then, let's go, or you cower into it and try and build slowly. And whether that was right or wrong at times, I probably got it wrong an awful lot of the time, but I was happy to stand at the front.
He was good, Tony, mate. It was all about behaviours, and a lot of what he indoctrinated into me at the time still with me now, for sure. So a great time at Warrington, and then you ended up going to Catalans. Obviously, we've got Catalans this week, so it's really relevant. I'll be honest with you, mate, I get a nosebleed when I leave Leeds, and I've never had any inkling of going anywhere else anyway, but if I had done, I think Catalan would probably been last place in the world just for the travel. Interestingly, my mum had a house over there for about 15 years, so Catalan became almost their second team. But why Catalan? What made you make the decision at the time, and what was the experience like?
And again, it was another one of those, rugby league can be quite a, not fickle sport in the sense of, but the turnover of what a coach wants or what they want to move you on or however it works out. Or I think my contract was coming to an end. There was talk I was going to stay at Warrington and extend, and there was, there could be a contract for you, and there might not be. And time was pushing on, and I think we got to maybe June, July, and it still hadn't fully been sorted. And I started to get a sense of, obviously, they want to move me on. This isn't actually what's going to happen. And Michael Monaghan went from playing the year before with him, who I was good friends with, to being assistant coach for Catalan.
Right.
So, because he was going, he says, "Do you want to come here? Would you fancy going?" And at the time, I was like, "Well, I want to stay at Warrington, but I'm not sure what's happening." And then all of a sudden, they announced that Kurt Gidley had signed. So I was like, "Well, that's my time's up." So then it all happened really quickly. Yeah, I moved to France. I think it was one of those. They were an ambitious club. The amount of players that they signed, as I'd signed, was ridiculous. I thought, this is on paper.
Yeah.
It was either the loosest team or the most talented team put in one room together. Because I think we had, what did we have? Todd Carney, Willie Mason, Dave Taylor, Glenn Stewart. I think Justin Horrow was in there, Paulie Ayton. So they were all Chris and Inu, like lots of stars.
Yeah.
But had all had checkered pasts in the nicest, no disrespect to them.
Characters.
But amazing players and such a talented rugby team. So the opposite, Pat Richards was in there as well. So I think the talent that had gone there, I was excited for. And the first season we had a really good. We were mid-table. I can't remember if we made the playoffs or not. I can't remember how it worked out, but it was a good experience. And living there and playing there is completely different to being a player over here and travelling for 1 week.
Right.
Because you adapt to the climate better, you adapt, obviously it gets warm with you, and you're training in it every day, so you embrace it. It's not as big of a shock, whereas when we go over now, it's like you go from 10 degrees to 32 degrees, and it's like, it's a shock, and it's like, whoa, I've got to get used to this environment. So that's definitely an advantage for them over there, and I do think that when you embrace the culture and you embrace you get over the language barrier and you get over the different way of living, because it's a slower way of life over there. Like banks just shut for no reason, or shops just shut for no reason. Like I think we landed on the Saturday, and we didn't have any groceries or anything. And I says, right, well, it's all right. We'll just get settled, and I'll go to the supermarket tomorrow, and I'll get everything. Got up in the morning, and nowhere was open. And I was thinking, surely there's a corner shop, or surely there's something there's an off license that's open that I can get something from, milk, anything. No, it's Sunday. I was like, well, that's just ridiculous. And he's like, well, we just shut. Everything's shut on a Sunday.
Bit different to
I was like, I just thought, a bit different to Widnes, where you can go down the corner shop and get anything. But no, I think, but once you embrace that lifestyle, and once you embrace the slow way of being a bit calmer in the nicest possible way, and planning a bit further, then you really enjoy it. And I think the downside that we had as a group at that time was that as soon as June, July, August comes, it literally turns into Ibiza.
Right.
Like, so Cannes Plage, which is a ghost town for the majority of the year. So you go into like 3 coffee shops, that's it, in the whole of Cannes Plage, and 1 supermarket and 1 restaurant. And you're like seeing the old same French bloke sat there smoking 50-odd rollies in the morning. It literally changes from that to Ibiza pretty much within a 3-week period. All these beach bars get popped up, and it's just carnage. So having a group of players together that like to have a beer, that like to go out and have a good time, and then tell them they can't do those things when they're also living on their own in all these beach bars, was definitely a recipe for disaster.
Well, you know what? As a coach, as a manager, these are the types of things that we're not always aware, privy to, that you've got to manage without a doubt when it falls down at times. Interestingly, I was there. I think the last game is in the £1 million game at Leeds. And I was there. And when I think back now on reflection, where Lee Leopards, as I know now, they were obviously Centurions back then, they went down. It was an adverse moment for them, but they've since bounced back up and won a Challenge Cup, the top 4. So it's brilliant for them. You worry that, Catalan have done some really good things and have become a revelation since then. Had they have gone down, and you'll know much more than me, how bad would that have been? Could that have ended?
That would have been there. Bernard pretty much said that would be the end. You would not be getting a contract, and that would be. He was very adamant that it would be the end, or we would go into the French league and just say goodbye to Super League, and that would be the end of Catalan at the time.
Wow. So what do you remember about that game? How did that motivate everybody?
Well, everyone feared for their lives, didn't they? Everyone feared that, and I think because in that region as well, rugby league is so massive. Like, you don't know see them, but like, it's huge. Like, and to the actual people, it is so important that they have a rugby league team down there, and they're so passionate about it. Bernard puts his life into it, and if you represent the club and you provide and you give everything for the shirt, he absolutely adores you. He doesn't even care what goes on off the field in the nicest possible way with somebody. He does not care. He just wants, if you perform for him on the rugby field, he loves you to bits, and he'll support you through high heaven. But that's how I ended up becoming, in the nicest possible, that's how I ended up coming to Leeds, because I got offered a 3-year deal to stay, but we were going through that turmoil of actually, but there might not even be a club. Right. So I'm sat there. Bernard's offered me a 3-year deal to stay in Catalan. I've got Ryan McDermott ringing me and spending 45 minutes when it's costing me to be on the phone as well. He's ringing me EU charges, and I'm stood there. Brian can go on and on and on and asking me a million questions. Then I've got Gary ringing me, talking to me about contracts and telling me this is what you're having, you're not having anything else, as he does. And then so that all that's going on at the same time. So I had to make a decision. Even with, I think it was before Steve had even come in. I think McNamara hadn't even come in yet. He was, Laurent had been sacked, and this was all in that same period when Leeds were offering me a contract to come and play here for 3 years, and they were offering me a 3-year deal. So it was like up in the balance what I was going to do. Leeds were at the top of the league fighting for stuff, and we were struggling at the bottom. And it was one of those, do I go back, do I stay in France and enjoy my life and have a great setup and really enjoy and I was enjoying my rugby, or do I go to Leeds and really try and kickstart my career again and really enjoy being in a successful environment? So that was kind of the conversation that happened. But Brian rang me about 4 hours worth of chats with him. Just constantly grilling me on scenarios and personnel and how would they deal with this and how would they deal with that. It was actually really interesting, but it was funny.
It's interesting on 2 little threads, really quick. I've got about 3 more questions. I could talk to you all day, mate, because there's things popping up all the time. Number 1, since then, Steve McNamara has done an unbelievable job, and I'm really, I've seen Catalan's journey for a lot of years, a lot of interest, and I'm a big fan of that French Rugby League contingent, and I think he's been outstanding. On reflection, seeing him finish top of league, make a Challenge Cup final, make grand finals. How well Steve McNamara done, and what will it mean to that region?
Well, I think, sorry, just to touch on what I said at the end as well, when we come back from that £1 million game, we landed at Perpignan Airport, and the scenes there were like winning a Challenge Cup final.
Wow.
And I mean, the airport we would have got back at 2 a.m. maybe, and the airport was full of Catalan fans hugging you, saying how happy, like just in pure elation of like you'd saved the club, like, and it was that. And I remember talking to Steve at the time and saying, when the club actually wins something, it's going to be unbelievable. And then the following year they went on and won the Challenge Cup, which was from that adversity to that. And the scenes that everybody saw there inside of the Castlette and everything, that was unbelievable. And I think that was due to the passion that's down there for rugby league and the way that Bernard's put his life in front of it for it to be a success. And you can see now, I think the biggest thing as well, I was only something like the fourth English player to play for Catalan, maybe fifth. I think there was Leon Price, Elliot Whitehead, and then it was Jody Broughton and me. I think I was the fourth player. I may be wrong, maybe a couple more before then. But there was hardly any English that went there. It was just, they saw it as French and Australians versus the English. That's how it was taken as Catalan's journey. That's what they wanted to do. But obviously with quota spots and all that kind of stuff, and English players don't class as a quota spot, obviously Steve's gone in there and realised there's a loophole that we can bring more English players through. There's so many good English players there that know the competition. What would be silly not to get them? And as you've seen now, there's a lot more that have gone and been successful there. Like Sam Tompkins has played there, he tore it up. Even Tom Johnson's gone there and he's having an absolute storm of a season. So I think now there's been a large number of English players that have gone, and they've seen the worth in that as well, because the Australian player would have to pay a fortune, isn't going to come over to thingy, whereas lots of English lads are going for the opportunity.
Elliot Whitehead as well. He's obviously been a back row. I've always paid a lot of interest to his story. Your story, Richie, just really quick, and again, I think what I'd really like to touch on is the selfless nature that you've displayed for me, being very much of the spirit of the Rhinos, in the sense that, like to Luke Gale, other halfbacks that have come in, obviously you've been an halfback by trade, number one now playing fullback. Me personally, I thought it was a revelation, because when you're in the heat of the moment, picking them 3v2s, those bits of awareness and the ability to execute under pressure and the bravery to get on those loose balls, to manage players coming out at ruck, getting them either side, certainly on goal line, I think that's where you shine, as opposed to having less hands on, having to move people around. Doing what you do on the front line at the arrowhead is where you really excel. So at times in your career, you've had to be accommodating for other players when other players with a lesser attitude would have spat the dummy out, left, caused the chaos, caused the storm. But you've managed to be able to do that. Where do you think A, that selflessness comes from, and B, as playing fullback being a revelation, if you could go back over your career, would that be somewhere you'd maybe start?
I'll touch the second question. I think playing fullback is very similar to playing standoff.
Yeah.
In my game, in the sense of the way I love to support. I love to play a support game. Yeah. Like you say, I like to be on the end of stuff, and lots of attributes of the two merge into one. I've had 7 on my back for a long part of my career. But even in those teams when I had 7 on my back, I was almost just doing the role that I'm doing now. Like when I was at Warrington, I had Lee Breers, Michael Monaghan and Brett Hodgson as the 3 other spine players. So technically I didn't have to do anything. I just had to push support, come up with a good play and defend. That was literally my job for a long period of time. And when I found it hard in my career is when that controlling player has stepped out of has left, like Lee Breers retired, Monaghan retired, and Hodgson, they all went in the same year. So those 3 players leave and they go, right, Rich, now you've got to run the show. Now I'm in no disrespect, like I'm not that player I've tried to do it, and when I came to Leeds, that was my role, to come and be the organiser. And when we walk into that Leeds team, for years Leeds didn't have a structure. In the sense of, and the way we're playing now, we're going way back to not having such you land on this point and you run this play for this play for this play. Like that's not Rowan's way of coaching. And that certainly wasn't Brian's way of coaching. Yet the conversations we'd had with him were that's what he wanted to bring a bit more element of that in. So I walk into a Leeds team that's just won the grand final, that's been together for a long time, and say, right, we're doing this now. And everyone's like, what? And trying to get that buy-in, and everyone's, oh, this is great, yeah, we work on it. But then as soon as it starts going a bit awry, and they go, everyone reverts back to what they were doing because they feel comfortable, and actually, no, we want to play this way. So then you become the scapegoat. It's like, well, we're not doing what you're doing because we want to do the thing. That's what happens. That's sport. I think the point on being adaptable and being a team player is just, I always feel it's your job. I feel like it comes with, you've been around players before that have spat the dummy out, and you've been around players that, and in my time, I've probably had periods in my younger days when I'd have spat my dummy out and been like, this is rubbish, like this is ridiculous, why am I not playing? And felt that emotion of it, but it doesn't actually get you anywhere. It just makes you look a bit of an idiot, and you lose more respect in the team for doing that way, and you don't, like I got dropped for the 2010 Challenge Cup final because I'd just come in for it was my first season with Leeds, with Warrington, obviously big name signing. I'd played for a bit of the thing. I got injured I think I did my MCL midway through the season, managed to get back about 3 or 4 games before the final, and thought, I played the semi-final, come off the bench in the semi-final, so I thought, I'm going to be on the bench again to play the final. The night before, Smithy dropped me for the final and said, I'm not playing you, you can be 18th man, because he played Monaghan in the halves, Clarkey and Mickey Hyam with the hookers.
Yep.
So at the time, I was angry and thinking, why on earth? Like, you brought me here to play these big games. Why am I not playing? Like, I should be playing. But in reflection, when you look back and you think, well, actually, Clarkey had been at the club for 15 years and gave his heart and soul. He'd missed out the final the year before because he was injured, so he was obviously going to play. Mickey Hyam was playing really well as a hooker, and Monas could easily go in the halves. So I didn't deserve to play in that because I'd been injured, and I didn't deserve to be in that team. But at the time, you're thinking, why am I not playing? This is ridiculous. But you learn from that in a sense, and you just realise that there's a bigger picture in all of this. Like, in the sense of, at some point, I'm going to retire, and I'm going to leave Leeds, and Leeds will carry on for the next 20 years, just as you done. Like, you was here for Stowart for however many years, and so decorated. But the club's brought someone else in. Yeah. Like, now we've got like James Bentley and James McDonald that are now back rowers, and Reece and that. So the club moves on, and you would just become a part of that history of. So if you get hell bent on, well, why am I not playing and throw your toys out, then unfortunately you're just going to leave, because you're not going to go anywhere. That's what happens, isn't it? Yeah. Because the club goes, well, hang on a minute, no, we're all going this way. You can either come with us, or you can kick up a stink and cause a distraction, and you don't need you. Like, we don't need that, go away. So I think I had in 2018, was it 2018 or 2019? I think it might have been even a bit late, when Luke Gale came in. So when Gailey was coming, and there was rumours that Gailey was coming, I was saying to Rich, like, what we're doing, like, what's the situation? I'm hearing rumours that there's a 7 coming. Do you want me? We still had Rob Louis at the time. I'm just like, what we're doing? Am I? Yeah, no one's coming. Like, that's not. They're in talks, but we don't know what's going to actually happen. I was like, yeah, no, fine, it's fine. End of the season come. I've still got 12 months on my contract. Luke Gale signs. So Rich goes to me, oh, well, you could look elsewhere if that's what you want to do. And I was sat, similar situation as I was at Warrington when I was gone to Catalan, similar sort of situation in my career again. I either say, oh, sod this, right then, I'll go and find somewhere else, or just say, it's at the end of the season, I'll just come back in pre-season, train, put me in what position you want and see what happens. So that kind of just and as be it, people got injured, I go into a fullback role and end up playing, and then the rest is history, I think. But I could have easily spat my dummy out and said, well, sod this then, you're bringing in Luke Gale, I'm off. But I was like, but that would have just made me look, one, I wouldn't have got the outcome I wanted because I would have gone to another club. 2, I wouldn't have been successful. I wouldn't have played at Wembley, won a Lance Todd. And 3, my career would have fizzled out a different way. Whereas now I've had a really good career and I've loved my time here. And it's because I was able to stick it out when things were going a bit rubbish. One person's opinion is different to another person. So a new coach might come in and say, actually, you are good in that position. Or I want to play you there. Or might say, no, actually, no, that other guy's right, you're off. And just the last thing on Rich was, although we started off with a bit, because it was funny actually, because Rich was the same, he was assistant coach at Warrington when I left Warrington and went to Catalan.
Yeah.
In that same period. So this same situation happened again.
Right.
But what Rich was brilliant at, and what we ended up having a really good relationship, and we have still got a good relationship on, was he was honest and said, this, once Gailey had signed, he said, this is the situation, he's my 7, Rob Louis my 6, you're going to be a bench spot if anything, but I'll fight for a spot. And he was clear with what he said, so he actually gave me an objective to aim for and strive for. So I thought, well, I'll show you that I can actually play. And then once I'd shown him that I could play in those different roles, and I think he gained respect for me in that way.
Yeah.
He then played me because he was like, well, I can't not play you now because you're playing really well.
Yeah, and you was.
Yeah, so and I think for going from all of that, players that get disgruntled and spit the dummies out and want to leave, it's sometimes if you ride the storm out, then sometimes you come through the other side and it ends up being the best thing that's ever happened. But otherwise, you go away disgruntled and then you look like a player that's left and gone disgruntled somewhere else.
Richie, this is episode 28, right? And I remember when we started this, I said, Phil, we've got to keep these down to about 12, 15 minutes max. I could talk to you for another hour.
I know I've got training.
Yeah, I know, he's going to go training and we've got to get this edited and out. I reckon this could be part 1. Because, mate, I'm like, I want to keep going. I can see Phil sweating behind camera, like, we've got to cut all this down. Let's move, last question here. Obviously, looking forward to Catalans this week. I'm the delusional optimist always, mathematically, right? Because Warrington play Saints, OKR have got Salford. If Saints and OKR get the results, and we get a result, this goes into last week again, obviously against Castleford, right in there. So big trip for us, and record-wise, our last 20 games. I think we've got 10, we've got like a 50% success rate, which is pretty good in that cauldron at Catalan. How do you see this week panning out?
I think it's what we touched on earlier. I think exposing our younger players, because we're going to have a similar sort of team, because there's nobody coming back from injury. If anything, we've probably got more injuries. So we're going to have a similar sort of team that's going to go out there that played last week. Yeah. And showing how, I think Rowan's challenged the group, and as a group we've challenged ourselves as stepping forward and stepping towards the danger, in the sense of stepping forward and showing that we can come back from a loss and still perform at a high level. Now, don't get me wrong, we'll go into a team that, again, is pushing to be league leaders, is at a point where they're playing ready for playoff rugby and they're ready to go. Also, the challenge of going to Catalan, the heat, and playing under those circumstances is a tough ask to do. But I think the group has recovered well from last week, and I think we've been able to not park the result and bury it, but in the same token understand how it went wrong, how it easily went wrong, because the first 20 minutes of that game were nip and tuck. Bear in mind, there was the 2 tries from kicks, which had a swing. Harry Newman, no try, makes a massive swing in the sense of the scoreline, and then all of a sudden fatigue, and you compound errors, and then you're on the back foot, and the scoreline blows out. Credit to Wigan. But I think learning from that and going forward with a new approach will show the character of the squad and will give them the most experience they'll need going forward as a club. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out, and hopefully we get the win.
So there's always a chance. When there's a chance, there's a chance. Getting back up off the ring, I can't wait to see it. Our reserves are all sorting action against OKR away, 4:30 p.m. kick-off on Saturday, and there's a PDRL festival at Castleford as well. All the very best to those guys. Mate, thank you very much for joining me in Box 2. Really appreciate it. I hope you'll get back to Headingley Stadium 22nd September. Last game at home, last regular league round here at Headingley. I hope you'll be able to join us then. In the meantime, have a wonderful week. Big thanks to Richie. See you soon. God bless.